miles from an observer's viewpoint. So assuming that's about 1.5 miles away, because where they landed was pretty flat, that's what they intended it to be, it was supposed to be flat, why is the illumination level different from the foreground to the background? It's a great image in terms of what it shows, but it's not photographically correct. And being out of focus implies it was using a telephoto lens, which they didn't carry. There was only one lens on the Apollo 11, and incidentally there were 2 cameras carried, but only one was used. And the story goes that Buzz Aldrin said to Neil Armstrong, "If you're first out onto the moon, mate, I ain't taking your picture." And he didn't, because there is no photograph of Neil Armstrong on the lunar surface that is recognizable as such. I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes a good story. And here's another piece of fabrication. Astronaut Edwin Aldrin inside the lunar module after his moonwalk, ditto Neil Armstrong. Why is one wearing a spacesuit and the other not? You'd expect them both to be dressed similarly. It took me about an hour, but I found that original photograph and the sequence in which it was taken. It was taken about 5 days earlier, on the way to the moon, we're told, not while he's on the moon. This is a NASA publication for this book. I kept the titles in. On sale at Kennedy Space Center, and it's basically a lie. It may be what you think it might look like, but it's not what actually happened. So NASA is becoming a bit of a fantasist. Moving on to Apollo 12, we have a very strange image here, very, very weird indeed. What on earth is all this? What is this? There's the lens flare. This is not lens flare. Remember I mentioned that we should have a look out for those little girders that were in the background of the globe? Possibly those are they. This is Al Bean on Apollo 12, taken by Conrad, and you can see where the sun is coming from, over his right shoulder. And his whole shadow area here is beautifully detailed and illuminated, which it shouldn't be, albeit it's black and white film, it's not colour. But let's just have a look at the photographer. There's the camera. What's his hand doing down here? It's nowhere near the camera. It's like it's a pasting job. It just doesn't make sense that that person took this photograph. You're looking down on the camera. Remember I mentioned about the height of the horizon? Now let's just move forward to look at another photograph, again of Al Bean. Look at the horizon here, the difference. Again, we have this weird stuff going on in the background, which NASA refuses to answer the question, what are they? They look like a row of spotlights. I don't know, it could be lens flare of some sort. But let's just have a look at the sequence in which those photographs were taken, similar to the ones we did on Apollo 11. And this is the actual sequence in which the photographs appeared on the NASA website. Boring, boring, pretty good. Boring, boring, pretty good. Boring, boring. I don't think so. That's not the way photographers work. That's the way fantasists work. You're expecting us to believe that the same photographer who was just taking boring pictures of this little thing here, it's called a genome. They appear in a lot of photographs and they show colour rendition. Pity it's a black and white photograph. You can do that. This is almost an identical picture to that. And then suddenly, there he is, we'll take his picture here. He's got the exposure right, the focus right, the composition right. And he thinks, we're going to do something else now, we're going to take another picture of that little genome here. And here it is again. Oh, he's back, we'll take another one. From another position. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I do not buy that this is genuine photography. This is fantasy. Now we come on to some work that's been done by an American photoanalyst called Jack White, who I met, well, I've never met him, I've spoken to him on the phone. I did an interview on Coast to Coast AM in America, a 3-hour radio interview. I was sitting on my sofa on the phone and he was in Las Vegas. And we chatted for about 3 hours, all about the Apollo stuff and how it never happened and all the rest of it. And one of the people who emailed me afterwards was Jack White and said, "Look, I've got some pictures which will back up a lot of what you're saying." And I said, "Well, the best thing for you to do is to send them over to a particular website, AULIS, A-U-L-I-S, we get the detail at the end." And that's David Percy's website, who's done a lot of work on the whole subject. So he sent them over to him, and David Percy published a whole series of these photo analysts. This is one of them. This is Apollo 12, and this is one of those strange shadow angle pictures that we all hear can't possibly happen and how get poo-pooed all over the place. But would somebody explain how, if the photographer has got his back to the sun, which he obviously has, this thing here, it's not that far away, it's the Surveyor 3 craft which supposedly landed, how the shadow goes that way? I don't get it. Can somebody explain? Because it appears to be a composite. And here are the models that are being used on Apollo. All right, let's just read it quickly. These two Apollo 12 photographs cannot photographically both be genuine. The crater at the top, there's the crater at the top, is obviously the same, yet in one photograph, the Surveyor, that's this thing here, is tiny, there it is there, and the other is huge. Yet the crater remains the same size. The laws of perspective do not work this way. I believe that all photos of Surveyor 3 were staged with various size scale models on a miniature stage set. I can't disagree with that. There's the crater in two pictures. Notice the numbers. 7090, 1122. They're not sequential. AS is Apollo Saturn 12, magazine number 48, magazine number 48, that's 46, 48. And that's photograph series number. It doesn't mean to say there are 1,000 photographs in the magazine, it's just the number that they were numbered with. But would you agree that if you put an object there and you get a background object of that sort of size, it can't possibly be the same object with that background object of the same size taken from further away? It doesn't seem to make much sense. Miniature stage set models. And here we have one of the great anomalies of Apollo. This is Apollo 14. How is it possible for a camera pointing directly into the sun to have the silhouetted side of the subject lunar excursion module, the LEM, to be perfectly exposed? The LEM silhouette should be as black as the shadow. Additionally, a circular halo is not a true photographic result of pointing a camera directly at the sun. You don't actually point cameras at the sun. It's not a wise thing to do. It doesn't give you a very good photograph, except if you're on the moon. Then it gives you a wonderful photograph, because it also allows you to see every detail in the shadow area here. And you can even illuminate things like this, which are underneath the lunar module. But the shadow, of course, is boring, so that's black. I'm sorry. This is a beautifully staged recreation on a stage set. I don't know where it was. It was probably not even a secret. There were professional photographers around photographing all of the training and simulation exercises. This is just one of them. If you actually then examine in more detail, all the Apollo photographs have these little crosshairs on them, reticules they're called. They were put in a screen in the camera itself, and they appear on every photograph. However, on these particular ones, they appear to be lifting, which shouldn't happen. And if you then actually examine the light, it looks like a spotlight. It doesn't look like the sun, but you can see the thing inside the bulb. Right, let's do a little experiment here. This is the same lunar module on Apollo 14.